Do you have quorum? Richard?
Yes.
You said we do have quorum? Start the meeting?
Yeah.
I call the meeting to order at 3:30. I'm acting chairperson today in his absence. So please be patient with me. If I miss anything, please correct me along the way. Can we do roll call?
Yes. Jennifer?
Present.
Thank you. Annette?
Present.
And Amanda and Lieutenant Hodgkins are not joining today, as well as Martin. Patrick?
Sure.
Thank you. And, Hang's not here yet. Patrice?
Yeah.
Thank you. And doesn't look like Paula's online yet. And Rosa is here.
Here.
Thank you. And so we have quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any guest introductions?
There is Monica. Monica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Monica's online.
Hi. Hello.
Hi there.
My name's Monica. I am interested in joining in on these meetings and just learning as much as I can and supporting how I can. But I'm excited to be in this meeting with everyone today. So, hello.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And then
Next on the agenda is the approval of member absences. Do we have any absences that we need to approve?
we do. Amanda, Lieutenant Hodgkins, and Martin all notified us ahead of time.
So I need a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve. Ashley.
A second. And a second.
Who was first? I'm sorry.
Super.
Okay.
I need a pen that works.
And thank you. And you want to do a roll call or all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I don't mean to be a pain, but I can't find any pen that works.
Perfect.
So we're on item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes.
Before we move there, I
Okay.
think we need to.
We need to vote?
We don't need to vote, just need to call for any nays or abstains.
On the
Abstain.
member absences?
Yes.
Abstain.
Okay,
Abstain. 1,
thank you.
the rest approved.
And yes, now we can.
Okay. Item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes. Do we need some time to review the minutes from last month? Any questions or are we ready to move? You approve the minutes? I'm open to approve. You have a correction? Motion to approve. Motion to approve?
Okay.
First and second. Minutes are approved. Item number 4 is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
I think we have to call, all in favor.
All in favor of the meeting minutes?
Mhm.
Thank you for that correction. Number 3, approval of the meeting minutes. All on approved minutes for July 22nd? Aye. Aye.
Hi.
Anyone abstain? Any abstained?
Abstain.
Okay.
And again,
Thank you.
Is the air? The air on?
it should be,
Okay.
is it the high?
A little bit.
Oh,
It's gone.
I can try to lower the degree of it. We're good to go to public comment. Any members from the public who would like to speak to anything that's not on an agenda?
I get Monica already introduced herself.
Okay, I'll move to item number 5. We have a guest speaker, Troy Gibbon, the Director of Sacramento County Community Development. Welcome, Troy. He's online. I think he's muted.
And you are on mute, Troy.
You-
I unmute.
Which department? He's from?
Community Development.
Oh.
Troy, this is your opportunity to unmute yourself and then present on the topic of community development for, I think it was 2022 or 2023.
2023, I believe. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties there. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I do have, if it would be helpful, I could give a brief overview of the department because I think it provides some context for the topic today. If that would be acceptable to everybody.
Sure. Go ahead. Thank you, Troy.
Great, thanks. So the Community Development Department has ebbed and flowed actually through its county life here, where it's been multiple different departments at times. The current makeup of the department is the Planning and Environmental Review Division, Building Permits and Inspections, County Engineering, Construction Management and Inspection, Code Enforcement, and then we have an administrative component as well. We have about a little over 400 FTE. We have 5 different office locations, and amongst those are split kind of irregularly. But if you look at some of our divisions, which I think has presented some of the challenges in getting to a broader representation of our community within our department. The building permits and inspection components, the county engineering and the construction management and inspection division represents about 275 of those FTE. And then we have another 50 to 60 folks in code enforcement. And when we look at the job specifications for those inspector positions in particular, the job specifications require journey level experience in the trades, which is a difficult situation for us and to try and get the representation that we want to reflect the broader community with. So as we look at those job specifications, one of the things we're going to be doing is reaching out to DPS to see what we can do on the job specification front to help broaden our range of folks available. Because within the building inspector classification, for instance, there are really 3 classifications in general that we're talking about. And that's construction inspector, it's construction management specialist, and building inspector. And all of those, again, kind of revert back to this journey level of experience within the trades. And we would like to broaden that out because there are other tasks performed under those, which includes plan check and things that might not be out as in the actually construction on site. Other experience that is valuable that we would like to include within those specifications that we think will help broaden our ability to recruit quality applicants and that more closely align with the representation of our communities that we deal with. But from that perspective, I know, and I have the report from 2023 that we were able to look at. Some of the numbers, I think the only number I have a question about is our overall FTE, which seems to be a little bit low in this report versus our actual FTE. But having said that, I see, there are drops in a number of different categories that we want to shore up and improve upon. It is something that we talk about within our management ranks with our chief building official, with our chief of code enforcement, which are also our official over construction management and inspection as well. So those are often, they're kind of split between on-site work for vertical construction as well as off-site work for infrastructure, including sewer, water, electrical, etc., is really how those two divisions are divided. But looking for the same type of experiences as it's laid out in the current MQs as it stands right now as well. And I'll stop if there are any questions, and I can go on about some of the efforts that we're making to address some of those shortcomings as well, if that would be helpful.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes,
it's breaking up a little bit here. I apologize.
Get a mask.
Did anyone have questions?
I'd like him to elaborate on his efforts.
Did you hear that, Troy?
I did. Thank
Did
you.
you
So
elaborate?
we have obviously the standard components of what the county does, but we are working with DPS and others to reach out specifically to like the Hispanic Engineers Association, the Women in Transportation and Engineering Association, professional organizations like the California Building Officials Association, Sacramento Valley Building Officials Association, and in particular, we're looking at targeting. We've worked with DPS and others to secure, for instance, when we're recruiting for engineering positions, we'll get a mailing list, a list of all the active licensed engineers within the state of California. And we will send out emails and postcards to all of those folks as we're recruiting for positions to try and attract. Quite frankly, we're having a difficult time we have a number of vacancies that we're trying to fill right now. It's been a challenge, just kind of filling the ranks. We've had that in the planning department as well as some of the other categories as well. So we try and augment what we do. We're talking to DPS about employment fairs. I know our Department of Transportation has had some success in doing that recently. We're looking at doing something similar like that with our planning department and others. We also are looking and have historically, and we're looking at reviving this, looking at our junior college system through our systems. There is a construction management program at Cosumnes River College, which we've had some success recruiting out of historically for some of the inspector positions and other positions available more entry level within our divisions. So we are engaging on that front as well. So we're open for suggestions. We obviously want to improve this for a variety of reasons. But if there are other areas that we're missing, we are more than happy to augment our efforts and trying to get, again, this kind of broader representation as it relates to our community within our workforce in our department. So I don't know if there are questions related to that.
Any questions for Troy? I have no other questions.
Okay.
Nobody have any other questions in the room?
Madam Co-Chair? I do. Hi, Troy, my name is Patrick Hunter. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
So out of the 400 full-time employees, how many openings do you have? Or are those filled positions?
No, those are not all filled currently. Our vacancy rate depends on the division you're talking about. We have code enforcement is almost fully occupied. Planning is about a 28% vacancy rate. And I would have to get the specifics under our inspection components for you, but I'd be happy to provide that via email. I just don't have the statistic off the top of my head. I apologize.
No problem. And then out of that vacancy, where the majority of those vacancies concentrated? Is it entry level, managers, executive management?
It is primarily in the journey level positions as well as entry level. Primarily. There are a few vacancies in management at the, say, the principal level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Troy?
Excuse me.
No other questions? Yes, we're good.
So I have that follow-up item. I'll be happy to send to Corey or whoever the appropriate person is to distribute.
Perfect. Thanks, Troy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate your time today.
Oh, no
I know you're
problem.
a busy person, so we definitely appreciate you coming.
Oh, no,
and doing
my
the-
pleasure. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, have
I'll
a good
just-
afternoon.
I'll stay on if you don't mind and just listen.
Sure, absolutely. You're welcome to stay and listen.
Thank you.
Are we good to go to item number 6? Communications and reports. That's the chair or the EEO office. So I'm going to refer to the EEO office because I don't have any communications.
So the only other announcement is that Stephanie Jackson from the DEI office will be joining us September, I think it's 23rd, as will Chad Rin, Director of Finance, to give a presentation.
Jennifer and Chad will both be here in September.
Yes.
Oh, that's very good. Thank you.
You think Jennifer or Stephanie?
Stephanie Jackson. Okay, we can go now to item number 7, unfinished business. And the number 1 topic is finance, which my understanding is it's Chad's department. So he will be here next month, so we should review his numbers and statistics now. For me, any pen that works. This is the 5th one. Thank you.
So in looking at finances 2024 workforce statistics report and beginning on table 1, in 2019, the Department of Finance had a total of 175 employees. Of those, 93 or 53.1% were minority and 112 or 64% were female. In 2024, Finance had a total of 216 employees. Of those, 137 or 63.4% were minority and 133 or 61.6% were female. And moving on to table 2.1, for the job category comparison, the highest areas were office clerical with 117 total employees. Of those, 73 or 62.4% were female, and 76 or 65% were minority. Next highest category was professionals with 50 total employees. Of those, 31 or 62% were female, and 31 or 62% were minority. And last, officials and administrators with 28 total employees. 15 or 53.6% were female, and 13 or 46.4% were minority. And moving on to table 2.2, these are where all the job class lists. So this is maybe one of the first that we might have reviewed with the actual job titles.
It could be. Well, thank you for pointing that out.
And so this is what the committee approved, I think it was back in November, to display onto the workforce statistics reports. And then moving on to table 3.1, for hires and rehires, finance had a total of 71 new hires. Of those, 48 or 67.6% were minority, and 38 or 53.5% were female. In looking at new rehires, there were a total of 4 were minority and 2 were female. And moving on to table 3.2, for terminations, finance had a total of 40 terminations. Of those, 26 or 65% were minority, and 28 or 70% were female. And the highest number for reasons terminated was employee initiated or no reason given. And moving on to table 3.4, for promotions and demotions, finance had a total of 87 promotions. Of those, 54 or 62.1% were minority, and 56 or 64.3% were female. In terms of demotions, finance had a total of 1 demotion for this period. And moving on to table 4, for discrimination, harassment complaints, finance had a total of 5 complaints.
Any questions? I think we clarified at the last meeting that even though there's 7 allegations, it's 2 complaints. Okay. It could be 2 complaints with a combination of 7 different. Okay.
Correct. So like,
One complaint may have multiple allegations.
yes. So like this complaint A had 2 different allegations: race, color, national origin, ancestry, as well as age. Whereas complaint E also had race, color, national origin, ancestry, and sex or gender.
Any questions on Department of Finance report, statistics report? Do we have any questions? When Chad returns next month, excuse me, for the meeting? That's awesome. That's great.
I'm gonna do animal care first, or? Not to put you on the spot.
We can do animal care since I'm here. We don't have to make a motion once we do the numbers, right? Okay. So we're done with Department of Finance. We can, talk about animal services. That would be skipping to item number, or list number 4.
So in looking at animal care services, 2023 workforce statistics report, and looking at table 1, in 2018, animal care had a total of 51 employees. Of those, 17 or 33.3% were minority, and 37 or 72.5% were female. In 2023, animal care services had a total of 51 employees again. 18 or 35.3% were minority, and 39 or 76.5% were female. Moving on to table 2. The first highest category was protective services with 16 total employees. Of those, 8 or 50% were female, and 4 or 25% were minority. Next highest was service maintenance with 14. Of those, 13 or 92.9% were female, and 6 or 42.9% were minority. And last, office clerical workers with a total of 13 employees. Of those, 12 or 92.3% were female, and 6 or 46.2% were minority. And moving on to table 3.1 for hires and rehires, animal care services had a total of 22 new hires. Of those, 8 or 36.4% were minority, and 18 or 81.8% were female. And there were no rehires for this period. And moving on to table 3.2, for terminations, animal care services had a total of 16 terminations. Of those, 5 or 31.3% were minority, and 10 or 62.5% were female. And the highest reason for reasons terminated was employee initiated, no reason given, with 62.5%. And moving on to table 3.4 for promotions and demotions. There were a total of 10 promotions. Of those, 4 or 40% were minority, and 7 or 70% were female. In looking at demotions, there were a total of 4. Of those, 1 or 25% were minority, and 3 or 75% were female. And last, in looking at table 4 for discrimination, harassment complaints, animal care services had a total of 2 complaints.
Any questions for animal services? Ms. Patrick?
Richard, if you can go back to table 1.
Yes.
I had a question on that one in
Yes.
table 3.4. So my question would be, for most of all the ethnicity groups, it's not representative of the latest census. Is there a initiative to take a look at that? Like, for instance, Asians are represented in the 2020 census, 17.4. However, 2018 and 2023 is way below the census average of that demographics, as well as African Americans, as well as Hispanics, Native Americans. Actually, whites are actually doing much better than the average census by, looks like, more than 50% from the last census. Is there any initiative to take a look at that diversity or lack thereof?
So let me make sure I'm at, stating a question. So you think it's the numbers of white is higher now than it was previously?
No, for all the ethnicities,
Uh-huh.
based on the census, that would be one of the goals that my understanding for this committee to take a look at. So the goal, we're not meeting that goal in your department as far as in relations to the latest census for most, if not all, the minority groups listed. For non-Hispanic white, it's actually more than exceeding the goals. So my question is there, what is being done to take a look at that? Recruitment efforts, what's being done?
I would say that I'm not aware of, well, I'll speak for the department. There's no extra efforts in looking at that in the recruitment factor. I'm open to the conversation. Obviously, definitely open to the conversation. What we can do, just recruiting is a tough situation, but definitely open to the conversation of where we can market and where we can look at when we do open up the recruitment.
And I didn't see, was there any list of classifications for the department, Richard?
No, this is 2023.
Oh, that's
started in 2024.
Okay. So that would kind of help to understand and see, are these positions entry level, or what are the qualifications for the positions? I don't know.
Do you want me to answer that, or you just?
This chart is countywide.
Excuse me?
I said this chart is countywide. So it's not broken down by position, but if you go to the table 2, like,
Right.
Yeah,
Right. So the last column was for her department. That's the first thing I was looking at. But then I asked, was there any detailed classifications? Richard said no. And this is what we were expecting from the previous years, right? Okay.
but then that could probably tell you generally what the groups are made up of.
Yeah, we don't have that many classifications.
Right.
Are you interested in any particular ones up there, Patrick? Because I can tell you which ones they are.
Well, I didn't want to get away from Richard and the group stating that we would try to do it going forward. So not necessarily want to go backwards to get that. I just saw the disparity as far as the census, the latest census, and the percentages of ethnic groups in your department.
So something we need to work on in the future for recruiting efforts is what I'm hearing.
So about how many, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, can I ask something kind of about this on the same topic? It seems like you've got low minority representation in the protective services. Are those the animal control officers?
Yeah.
So are they sworn or
They're not sworn.
they're not sworn?
Yeah.
I didn't know what they counted as.
No, they're not sworn.
if you were curious about what specific job classifications were within each of the, job categories, the numbers are pulled, so I could certainly provide those
That would help.
like we have in the past.
That'd help. Yeah. So how many FTEs are there in the department? Sure.
I think I have 67 now,
Total 6.
total, everything.
This one looks like it's 51.
I know I don't have 51. I might be off 1 or 2, but I know I don't have 51. I either have 67 or 68. FTE.
And how many of those are filled? Maybe. I don't want to.
No, I'm thinking, because we're going through recruiting efforts. I would say close to, filled right now, probably close to 62, 50. Yeah.
So we're close.
61 are filled?
Those are filled.
Yeah.
How did those people get the job? Like, how did the 61 people get the job? Were they recruited? Did they hear about it? I mean, how did they respond to, like, how did they hear about the job? Or is it something that we can find out?
We don't do anything extra or special other than post it on social media and link in, but otherwise we go through the standard, process. The recruiting process is posted and listed on the website through GPS. And then we do, because animal care is such a hard field to recruit for, so we really post it on our social media whenever these positions become available. We have a very active social media page. It's the most active page in the county, and website too.
Which platform is that?
We have it on Facebook and Instagram.
Out of curiosity, is it all of your positions that you're having difficulty with filling? Because you said it's difficult to fill in animal care, or is it just certain ones?
It's just certain ones. I would say probably animal care officers are probably the most difficult. We get a slew of names, don't get me wrong. It's just,
Have additional qualifications.
yeah, the qualification.
Is it hard to retain?
No, I don't think it's probably not that difficult to retain.
Can you go back to the dashboard picture? Because when you were talking about retention, I was noticing the I was looking at the service year distribution. So you've got kind of an assortment of new and long-term employees.
I will say that Annette's department does fantastic Instagram and videos through YouTube. So that is something that our department actually borrows some of their campaigns, and we showcase it in our department as well, because they do a great job showcasing the animals that are in the shelter. So in case anybody's interested what adoptable pets there are.
We have an excellent PIO dedicated to animal care. It's definitely helpful. I think the what it probably doesn't reflect is the entry level positions, like your clerical positions and your animal control, or they're called animal care assistants. Those are entry level positions. And so you see a higher turnover in those positions only because you want them to get promoted. And I encourage that. I always encourage them. I will give them recommendations. I want them to learn and then get promoted either through the department or through the county. So I definitely support that effort. Your animal control officers are positions that people tend to stay in longer because it's a higher classification. Pays a little bit more. But I think overall in animal care, I think the positions, even entry-level positions, pay a little bit higher than other counties, so it's easier to recruit people into the position. Do you have any other questions I can answer? Okay. Okay. If not, we'll move on to the next department. Does anybody have a preference, or you want me just to go down the list? Because the number 2 would be the sheriff's department. We can start with the sheriff's department. Or go next to the sheriff's department.
Okay. So looking at the sheriff's department 2023 workforce statistics report. In 2018, sheriffs had a total of 1,895 employees. Of those, 649 or 34.2% were minority, and 655 or 34.6% were female. In 2023, sheriffs had 1,997 employees. Of those, 800 or 40.1% were minority, and 640 or 32% were female. And moving on to table 2 for the job category comparison. The first highest category was protective services with 1,190. Of those, 174 or 14.6% were female, and 481 or 40.4% were minority. The next highest category is office clerical workers with 441 employees. Of those, 355 or 80.5% were female, and 257 or 58.3% were minority. And last, technicians was the third highest category with 186 employees. Of those, 42 or 22.6% were female, and 156 or 83.9% were minority. And moving on to table 3.1 for hires and rehires. Sheriffs had a total of 183 new hires. Of those, 93 or 50.5% were minority, and 46 or 25.4% were female. New rehires, there were a total of 11. Of those, 8 or 72.7% were minority, and 7 or 63.6% were female. And then just to note that this includes temp hires and rehires that went from a temporary status to a permanent status during this reported period. Moving on to table 3.2 for terminations. Sheriffs had a total of 158 terminations. Of those, 45 or 28.5% were minority, and 59 or 34.4% were female. And the highest reason for reasons terminated was retired or disability retirement, with the next highest as employee initiated or no reason given. And moving on to table 3.4 for promotions and demotions, sheriffs had a total of 161 promotions. Of those, 73 or 45.3% were minority and 56 or 34.8% were female. For demotions, there were a total of 5, 2 of which or 40% were minority and 4 or 80% were female. And last, in looking at table 4 for discrimination, harassment complaints, sheriffs had a total of 5 complaints.
5 total complaints with 1,895 employees. That seems really low. That's a good thing. I just am surprised. Any questions for the sheriff's department? This is 2023 statistics.
The next would be 2024.
We'll go on to 2024.
So looking at sheriff's 2024 workforce statistics report and looking at table 1, just for comparison, in 2019, sheriffs had a total of 1,894 employees. Of those, 632 or 33.4% were minority and 606 or 32% were female. In 2024, sheriffs had a total of 2,002 employees. Of those, 824 or 41.2% were minority and 637 or 31.8% were female. And moving on to table 2.1 for the job category comparison, the highest number was protective services with 1,189 employees. Of those, 177 or 14.9% were female and 496 or 41.7% were minority. Next highest category was office clerical workers with 440 employees. Of those, 350 or 79.5% were female and 215 or 48.9% were minority. And last, technicians, the third highest category with 194 employees. Of those, 45 or 23.2% were female and 53 or 27.3% were minority. And now looking at table 2.2 with the job categories and specifically the job titles. Any questions on this before I move to the next table? Okay. And looking at table 3.1 for new hires, sheriffs had a total of 183 new hires. Of those, 106 or 57.9% were minority and 61 or 33.4% were female. In terms of new rehires, sheriffs had 9 total. 3 or 33.3% were minority and 3 or 33.3% were female. And moving on to table 3.2 for terminations, sheriffs had a total of 156 total terminations. Of those, 68 or 43.6% were minority and 56 or 35.9% were female. The highest reason for reasons terminated was 85, and that was 55% of the total. And moving on to table 3.4 for excuse me, promotions and demotions, sheriffs had a total of 147 promotions. Of those, 70 or 47.6% were minority, and 53 or 36% were female. And demotions, there were a total of 13. Of those, 5 or 38.5% were minority, and 5 or 38.5% were female. And moving on to table 4 for discrimination, harassment complaints, sheriffs had a total of 5 complaints.
Five complaints and over 2,000 employees. I still can't get over that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Impressive. With that. Okay.
Sheriffs has their own internal investigation
Oh, okay. Okay.
unit. I forget what it's called. FEO.
Internal affairs.
Internal affairs.
Internal
Oh,
affairs.
okay. Patrick, you have a question?
Does that, so yeah, I did have a question, but since you mentioned that, does that internal affairs investigate EEO complaints as well?
For sheriff's department, yes.
Okay.
So are we privy to that information? Because I think that would probably help us.
What it-
'Cause I'm with Annette with the numbers. I find it, she said impressive. I find it possible. It's not, there's no 1,800 people and 5 complaints. That's just highly improbable. So
Do you know what, did you just pull from our database or did we go back and look at their report numbers?
This is the combination of our database and the numbers that they provide.
So what's the difference between like the 5 complaints that are here documented versus the ones that go to internal affairs? What decides what direction they go in?
So in our understanding, all the complaints go to internal affairs. Some are labeled EEO protected characteristic type complaints, whereas the remaining complaints don't fall into that category. And this only covers EEO type complaints.
Correct. So if it's like a complaint of officer misconduct from somebody in the public, like that wouldn't be included. So it's all, a workplace violence complaint wouldn't be included in this. It's only limited to the EEO ones.
So could there be a complaint with, what did you mention earlier, officer behavior and an EEOC complaint? So it would still, could they be combined from the same investigation and then it would stick with internal affairs, right?
Typically, sheriff's department does investigations of their sworn people and non-sworn. They keep them, they do it internally. Their internal affairs unit does those investigations.
Okay.
I can talk to them and verify the numbers and ask about if like what all's included in this. So
I would like to know that information. Curiosity, Patrick.
no, thank you. So Corey, you said workplace violence complaints would not be included in this data?
right, because that's not an EEO complaint.
So it couldn't have elements of those types of complaints, like someone could threaten someone and use racial epithets, things like that. That wouldn't be included? Because I know for DHA, I've seen where it's both.
Yeah, in cases where it's both, if it has an EEO component, it would be counted as an EEO complaint if we're counting EEO complaints. What I'm talking about is if it's a plain, straight workplace violence complaint that doesn't have an EEO component, that would not be included in any of our statistics.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
I'm not here, but
But if it's combined, yes, it does get picked up.
Even sexual harassment complaints too.
Sexual harassment complaints are based on a protected characteristic, so they'd be counted on in these. So yes,
It happened to one of the officers.
so
Any other questions for the sheriffs? 2024, no, 2023.
Yeah, I would be curious of how many complaints don't get documented.
2024 and 2023.
Madam Vice Chair, I would be interested in how many complaints that don't get documented. Because as you said, 1,800, 5 or 6 is very, very unbelievable. So someone would maybe, do they resolve them at the lowest level where things are worked out? But I find it very highly improbable that there's only 6 complaints in the sheriff department of all places, because I know that the jails and the probation department, it's so many complaints in the community against. So I just find it hard to believe that internally there's just pretty squeaky clean. So someone maybe need to come and talk to us and say, hey, you know, this is all we got, but like, this is how we resolve complaints, because I find it very improbable. It's just, because if this is true, again, I've made the statement dozens of times, I'll make it again. This needs to be shared throughout the country if this is correct. Say, here's a model institution where we don't have problems as much as the rest of the country. Because,
EEO complaints, yeah.
yeah.
Something else to explain a little bit for the you mentioned like problems at the jail, like complaints from prisoners.
I know those are different.
Yeah, those are.
but
I was gonna say that
get it,
would be
but
like the
what I'm trying to show is there's dozens, hundreds, thousands of complaints with the people who, you know, are housed there, but internally amongst each other, you know, very few. I find that hard to believe. I'm not going to believe it. So again, I would like someone to come in and explain how are they dealing internally with that many people? It's just very improbable.
Do they have their own separate HR department too, the sheriff's department, right? Embedded.
Yes, they have an HR department, but in terms of like investigating complaints,
It's still through.
it's internal
HR
affairs that would
affairs.
handle it rather than HR. So would you like us to ask someone to
Sure.
talk to us?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm seeing nodding.
Yes. We had a committee member. What was his name? I think
I seen him at the MLK March
I think
too.
he became police chief over here in Rancho. What is his name?
Oh,
He was sitting on that committee a couple of years ago.
we've had sheriff's representatives.
He was a recruiter.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. I can see his face.
I have to go back and look at my old notes.
None. I don't remember.
It's gonna come back.
It'll dawn on me and like as
But
soon as we start talking.
I think he became police chief in Rancho. out here. Brandon.
Brandon.
Luke.
Oh,
Luke.
yeah.
Brandon Luke, yes.
I would have said Chief Luke, but for some reason I couldn't think of his last name, but I knew his first name was Brandon.
Yeah.
Luke.
I remember his face more than I've seen him at the March.
Do we want to move forward with the next department? Is there any other questions for the sheriff's statistics? I think the only other department statistics we have here is airport, is that correct?
We have 23 and 24
We're
airport.
moving right along, so I'm so excited. So we can move on to the airport 2023.
Okay. So in looking at airports, 2023 workforce statistics report, for comparison, in 2018, airports had a total of 289 employees. Of those, 149 or 51.6% were minority, and 82 or 28.4% were female. And in 2023, airports had a total of 304 employees. Of those, 162 or 53.3% were minority, and 86 or 28.3% were female. And moving on to table 2 for the job category comparison, the highest category was service maintenance with 91 employees. Of those, 27 or 29.7% were female, and 68 or 74.7% were minority. The next highest category was official administrators with 59 total employees. Of those, 13 or 22% were female, and 20 or 33.9% were minority. And the third highest category was professionals with 56 total employees. Of those, 23 or 41.1% were female, and 21 or 37.5% were minority. And moving on to table 3.1 for new hires and rehires, airports had a total of 27 new rehires. Of those, 16 or 59.2% were minority, and 6 or 22.2% were female. In terms of rehires, airports had 2 total employee rehires. Both were minority. One was female. And moving on to table 3.2 for terminations, airports had a total of 33 terminations. Of those, 19 or 57.6% were minority, and 14 or 42.4% were female. And the highest category for reasons terminated was employee initiated or no reason given with 18. In moving on to table 3.4 for promotions and demotions, airports had a total of 34 total promotions. Of those, 19 or 55.9% were minority, and 7 or 20.6% were female. And in terms of demotions, airports had a total of 5, 4 or 80% were minority, and 5 or 100% were female. And last, looking at table 4, for discrimination harassment complaints, airports had 1 complaint.
Questions for the airport? 2023 statistics?
What was the total number?
They had 302, I believe it was, or 304.
Employees, correct?
Like 304 total in 2023.
And then how many are full filled? Excuse me.
Sorry.
Those are employees. The numbers up here are employees.
I was wondering how many are filled. Is that what your question was?
Which
Oh, how many are filled?
filled?
No, she asked Patrick.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that 3 or 4 is filled things, because those are people, are filled positions.
How about currently?
What?
How about currently?
Currently?
Is that
Do you want to look at 2024 first and then, or do you want? So, oops, sorry, 334
thank you.
currently? And that was as of August 19th.
Such a large place. I just thought they would have more employees. But I'm sure they probably have a lot of different vendors. The restaurants.
Thinking exactly what you
Like-
thought is that they are their own island out there.
They
So
are.
it's shocking to me that they have their own fire department and their own public safety and all of the things. So it's shocking.
Any questions for the airports, 2023? Or move on to 2024 statistics if there's no further
Okay.
questions.
So in looking at airports 2024 workforce statistics report for comparison, in 2019, airports had a total of 288 employees. Of those, 148 or 51.4% were minority, and 79 or 27.4% were female. And in 2024, airports had a total of 322 employees. Of those, 173 or 53.7% were minority, and 95 or 29.5% were female. And moving on to table 2.1 for job category comparisons, the first highest category was service maintenance with 95. Of those, 28 or 29.5% were female, and 76 or 80% were minority. Next highest category was officials administrators with 67 total employees. Of those, 17 or 25.4% were female, and 23 or 34.3% were minority. And last, professionals was the next highest category with 57. Of those, 22 or 38.6% were female, and 19 or 33.3% were minority. Table 2.2 offers the total employees and the job titles. And if there's no questions, I'll move on to the table 3.1 for new hires and rehires. Airports had a total of 44 new hires. Of those, 22 or 50% were minority, and 12 or 27.3% were female. And rehires, there were a total of 3. Those 3 were minority. 1 or 33.3% was female. And looking at table 3.2 for terminations, airports had a total of 20 terminations. Of those, 7 or 35% were minority, and 3 or 15% were female. And the highest reasons for reasons terminated is employee initiated or no reason given. And moving on to table 3.4 for promotions and demotions, airports had a total of 38 promotions. Of those, 20 or 52.6% were minority, and 19 or 50% were female. In terms of demotions, airports had 3 total demotions. Those 3, seems a little, those 3 were minority, no female. This is a little off to me. I'm not sure what.
Something doesn't look right.
Yeah, this doesn't look right. Just the percentage. Probably should be
Or
100%.
just The,
Yeah.
the number, because if you look at it, at the top, it says one's white, so the total minority
Yeah,
is picking up that number.
we might have to follow up. Moving on to table 4 for discrimination harassment complaints. Airports had a total of 3 complaints in 2024, or rather 2023. Really.
Any questions for airports? Statistics 2024.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Patrick.
Vice Chair. Oh, okay, so I was asked to wait to see that table. So I saw 334 filled, but in the chart I saw 322. Does that mean new positions were allocated?
So remember for the 24 workforce statistics report, we're looking at 2023 numbers, so, they've had more, positions
That's what I just said. Were more positions allocated for this year? Does
allocated.
that, like,
New
added?
positions added to the budget,
Is
new
that what?
allocations, is what you're asking, right?
There's more filled positions. The numbers don't show the allocated positions, so we don't know if they had vacancies that they filled
Okay,
or if there are positions added that they filled.
okay.
I mean,
So it just shows the field position.
it just shows the people. So it's filled positions, people.
And then we don't know how many are allocated.
At least not shown on those.
So does anyone know?
To look at the SRA or the
It's in the budget someplace.
Budget.
SRA. That's not.
So the answer, I it's someplace, I heard it was in the budget.
Yeah, that,
Is there-
that information is in the budget on the, county's website. But it's just not something that we normally look at, or offer in the stats.
Because one of the reasons why I asked is because when it comes to recruiting, and you have open positions, then that might be an opportunity to take a look at the recruiting efforts and where. So that's one of the reasons why it would be interesting to know how many
Allocated position.
allocated positions versus how many filled positions.
And we're gonna add something.
In the dashboard, it does show on one of the tabs how many positions the department has. So at the bottom, the second tab, position stats, it shows full or positions FTE, which is 370
There it is.
positions, and then we have 41 vacancies.
Thank you.
But what it won't show is when the positions were allocated. So if they got additional positions in the current fiscal year or the last fiscal year.
Thank you. That's
That's a pretty accurate number, that's
that
good.
number's what
Very good.
helps.
Not higher, 370.
So, okay.
This is accurate because we were just allocated 2 more positions and it's already.
It's already out the door, yeah, of course.
I look like you can break it down by what job classes and then average vacancy.
You can, and it even breaks down like how long the aging vacancy is per classification. So it's a good tool to use for the departments that really struggle with recruitment efforts because it can show which classifications have been vacant for 6 months, which classifications have been vacant for over a year, over 2 years, and so on and so forth.
Excellent information.
Amendment.
I mean,
But this doesn't always take into account like when departments pull positions for one reason or another necessarily. It's just, that's what it is.
Yes, for sure. And as we know, when the budget is facing hard times, departments are asked not to hire as well as a cost saving. So there's that. Just a lot of different factors.
Thank you, Hank, that was helpful. Any other questions on the airport 2024 statistic numbers? No other questions? Well, looking at the time, do we have time to take on one more department? Or should we continue on with the agenda? We could do probation. I walked over there to see if the numbers were here, and they are. Probation 2023. Let's do probation. I had such a good experience out there. Such a wonderful department. If you ever get a chance to go on a tour of probation, it's remarkable the programs that they offer to the youth.
So in looking at probation's 2023 workforce statistics report, for comparison, in 2018, probation had a total of 635 employees. Of those, 328 or 51.7% were minority, and 301 or 47.4% were female. In 2023, probation had 635 employees again. Of those, 399 or 62.8% were minority, and 335 or 52.8% were female. And looking at table 2 for job category comparisons, the highest job category was protective services with 514 total employees. Of those, 246 or 47.9% were female, and 328 or 63.8% were minority. The next highest category was office clerical workers with 49, 37 or 75.5% were female, and 34 or 69.4% were minority. And last, the third highest category was officials administrators with 26 total employees. Of those, 18 or 69.2% were female, and 13 or 50% were minority. And moving on to table 3.1 for new hires and rehires, probation had a total of 15. Of those, 11 or 73.4% were minority, and 11 or 73.4% were female. There was one new rehire for this period who was female. And in moving on to table 3.2 for terminations, probation had a total of 49 total terminations. Of those, 19 or 38.6% were minority, and 22 or 45% were female. And the highest number for reasons terminated was 38, retired or disability retirement. And then in moving on to table 3.4 for promotions and demotions, probation had a total of 111 promotions. Of those, 70 or 63.1% were minority, and 58 or 52.3% were female. And there were no demotions for this reporting period. And moving on to table 4 for discrimination, harassment complaints, probation had a total of 6.
Any questions for the airport probation 2023 statistics? If not, we'll move on to probation 2024 statistics.
So I'm looking at probation's 2024 workforce statistics report, and starting with table 1. For comparison, in 2019, probation had a total of 664 employees. Of those, 357 or 53.8% were minority, and 333 or 50.2% were female. In 2024, there were a total of 644 employees. Of those, 419 or 65.1% were minority, and 333 or 51.7% were female. And moving on to table 2.1 for job category comparison. The highest job category was protective services with 517 total employees. Of those, 244 or 47.2% were female, and 347 or 67.1% were minority. The next highest category was office clerical workers with 54. Of those, 39 or 72.2% were female, and 38 or 70.4% were minority. And last, professionals was the third highest with 28 total employees. Of those, 22 or 78.6% were female, and 16 or 57.1% were minority. Moving on to table 2.2, a listing of the job categories along with the job titles. And if there are no questions, I'll move on to
One
table.
question.
Yes.
What's the difference between assistant chief probationary officer and assistant probationary division chief? Those two different positions? They are, okay.
We have different divisions. We have, adult field services, adult community corrections, juvenile field, court. So each
You need those-
division have their own assistant. And then we have the chief assistant probation officer, which is right under the, monitor.
Okay. Very good. Such an impressive program. Aside from statistics, it's a very impressive.
So we have two assistant chief. We have, Julie Larry and Mark Marquez.
Okay.
And then right above them is Jarvis.
Did he?
Did you know Cliff Meeks?
Yes.
Very good.
And Mark was at the
In- Moving on to table 3.1 for new hires and rehires. Probation had a total of 78 new hires. Of those, 62 or 79.6% were minority, and 37 or 47.4% were female. And rehires, there were a total of 4. 3 or 75% were minority, and 3 or 75% were female. And moving on to table 3.2 for terminations. Probation had a total of 65 terminations. Of those, 38 or 58.4% were minority, and 35 or 53.8% were female. And the highest reason for reasons terminated was retirement or disability retirement with 42. And moving on to table 3.4 for promotions and demotions. Probation had a total of 84 promotions. Of those, 50 or 59.6% were minority, and 46 or 54.8% were female. And demotions, there were a total of 2 who were female. And moving on to table 4 for discrimination harassment complaints. Probation had 1 complaint for this reporting period.
That was a slow year.
1.
Because the last one, I think, had like 5 or 6. Yeah.
And they don't have internal affairs.
We did.
They do? Oh, okay. Wow.
We have better statistics for probation though than we do for sheriffs, because although probation has their own internal affairs, we're more involved with their investigations, because we do a lot of their non-sworn investigations. And sometimes even on some of the sworn ones, we work closer with them than we do with sheriffs. So.
Thank you.
Corrections, Mark was at a meeting confirmed with that. No.
Oh, okay. Any questions on probation's statistics? Yes, Patrick.
Yes, I can recall Marlon, when he was on the committee, the question was asked, the numbers for the demographics look pretty good. And the question was asked, how do you do that? And correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody can remember, he said, we try to mirror the people we serve. And that's something that sounds familiar. I'm paraphrasing now. This is probably one of the only larger departments that actually does that. And although it doesn't feel good personally to hear that, being the history of mass incarceration and law enforcement, and then minorities, the people they serve, mirrors the people that they hire and promote and retain. So with that said, how can this be emulated throughout the rest of the department? I mean, the rest of the county? It's something we really have to look at. Again, I find it very hard to believe it's only one complaint with a whole DEI initiative, and then one complaint in this department, 2 or 3 in the other larger departments. Why do we need diversity, equity, and inclusion if these are small complaints overall? Based on 12,000 employees, it's like 20 complaints through the whole county. But then I asked, why this whole DEI initiative? What is the real purpose of that? If this is what we're taking a look at, I believe the DEI initiative also encompasses employees of Sacramento County. There's a couple of 2-day summits. It's just something that's being hidden in these stats. And it needs to be transparent and exposed, because something is not quite right. That's my comment and my questions.
Any comments, questions about probation statistics? That's the last of the statistics for today. Would you have Stephanie? Stephanie. We'll be here in September, next month's meeting. We can ask her all those questions that you'd like to have answered to, Patrick.
I don't think she's going to be able to answer them all.
Well, you'll have your opportunity to ask her. She's going to be our guest speaker.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah, and Chad.
And Chad. Both will be here next month. So with that, it is,
I think they're both on the DEI cabinet.
I'm not sure if Chad is, but
Amanda Benson is on the,
you're right, Amanda is.
I don't know if it
Make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting at
A second.
4:58. We got a second. You both been playing tag team for a second. Thank you so much. Great program from us today. Hey. Keep this on.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And if you go into the office with that down online, they, whenever they try to budget, they'll list out the positions.